brain, yes, relates to the mind. The larger the brain, the larger the mind. But did the brain create the mind, like science says, or does it open us up to a mind, to a consciousness that already exists? And the larger the brain, the greater amount of that total consciousness we can accept. That's the different way of looking at it. That's new consciousness.
There seems to be a phenomena in this day and age which is quite consistent. People's obsession with what happens after they die and their anticipation of their death, but not living their very life that, in my opinion, is heaven on earth. What is the magnetic pull on a phenomenon that has become a life sort of task of yours and you've studied in great detail? What does that mean to you?
Well, my pull, if you will, my purpose is to share the knowledge, the knowing that I am. And when I say that, I'm speaking truth. Everything I say after that is just an adjective that describes what this particular little piece of meat happens to be. But having had a near-death experience, or what I actually call a death return experience, because from the inside out, you don't know that you're coming back and going to return. But having had that, I am aware of the fact that the feeling of I continues after the death of the physical body. And after spending years now, over 40 years of study and contemplation and both academic and spiritual study, the realization that all physical things in the material world have to die at some point, from plants to animals to humans to stars to galaxies. And what continues after that is pure consciousness, the source of everything. So that's where I'm coming from. And as you know, I've put a book together with not just to talk about it, because books and hearing somebody talk can't teach you something. They can tell you about that thing, but to know something, you have to experience it from the inside out. And that's why as a phenomenologist, I've developed puzzles and games and exercises and so forth to allow the reader to experience for themselves what I experienced without having to die to do so.
That's fascinating. I mean, I teach people equivalent to what we refer to as Shen projection, which is basically spirit power. Shen Gong is where we evoke the spirit and actualize it in a material form, giving dominion, imperium over things that are distorted, that are things that are part of this realm, dimension, whatever you want to call it. And some people would refer to it as astral projection, the ether, things of that nature. So I'm assuming that the techniques that you're referring to within your book evoke that sort of bleeding of what is ether, what is material, what is possible, that comes from the mind. Because the only way I could see that is manipulating your conscious and unconscious.
What I've tried to do is, of course, I've tried to write this for, as I say, devout believers, dogmatic atheists, and everyone in between. I don't think it matters, what one's belief is. The key is the experience, and I would relate it to just opening up one's mind. Let's say you and I, son, let's say we were back in the 15th century, and we're standing outside and we're looking up at the sky. Is there any question in our mind that Earth is the center of the universe? Not the slightest. You can see it, right? The stars circle around Earth every night. There they go. The sun during the day, the moon at night, and during the day. We are clearly in the center. And then here comes this guy, Copernicus, who says, no, no, Earth rotates. That's what makes it look like that. Can you imagine a person who has lived all the time knowing and seeing with their very own eyes that Earth is in the center of the universe, suddenly having a new way of awareness, of thinking that what they see is actually created differently? That's what new consciousness is all about. I mean, I'm not saying anything that hasn't been said by masters, teachers, gurus for thousands of years and all different backgrounds. But the idea is to be able to open oneself up to seeing it from a different perspective. That's the goal, and that's what these games are about, to make one realize that it doesn't have to be the way I always thought it was for things to appear that way. That's the key. I'll give you an example that we know science has been saying for centuries that brain and mind are connected. The larger the brain, the larger the mind. Humans have a larger brain and a larger mind than dogs, who have a larger brain and mind than frogs, who have a larger brain and mind than slugs, etc., etc. And therefore, that proves, from their perspective, that the brain creates the mind. But what if the brain, rather than creating the mind, opened up the mind to a consciousness that already existed? And the larger the brain, the greater the amount of existing mind you'd experience. It's like if you're in, and this is an example that I have in the book. Let's say that you're attacked from behind and knocked unconscious, and you wake up in complete darkness. And you can't see a thing. It's totally dark. And suddenly, boom, there's light, and you can look around and you can see that you're in a big arena, like, let's say, the Astrodome, we'll say, for example. And there's a light coming from the top, and you look, trying to see it, but it's much too bright to look at directly. What do you know? All you know is that the light was off and now it's on, right? No. That's one way of looking at it. But what if, rather than a light going on, a lens opened up at the top of the Astrodome, allowing a light that was already on to come into the building? You would have experienced the same thing, right? It had been dark, now it is light. I couldn't see, now I can. But to think that a light came on inside the building is only one possibility. The other possibility is that there was a light always on, but the roof was closed. And if the light is close enough to that new hole in the roof, it's too bright to look at. Well, that's the same thing with consciousness. The brain, yes, relates to the mind. The larger the brain, the larger the mind. But did the brain create the mind, like science says, or does it open us up to a mind, to a consciousness that already exists? And the larger the brain, the greater amount of that total consciousness we can accept. That's the different way of looking at it. That's new consciousness.
From your book, that's new
The
consciousness.
book, yeah. That's just one of the studies. I gave away something there, obviously, but that's a question that I ask. You know,
Yeah.
and, you know, so that's the type of thing that we give people a chance. I give people a chance to experience for themselves, so that they will have their own aha moment.
Mm.
Oh my God, it could be that way just as much as the other way.
Yeah, it's kind of like a separation. I do things a little differently in relation to I mean, really subjectively, what is consciousness is really, I mean, there isn't a single piece of science right now that can define what that is. It's a subjective distortion. Even dear friends of mine like Tom Campbell, who were explorers of consciousness and out of body experiences for the better part of 50 years, has a theory on everything, but it's a theory. It doesn't make it an absolute. I mean, I find absolutes is a little concerning, something you want to run in the other direction. If someone gives you the rule set, it's only determinative by your subjective to objective experience. There has to be a universal superglue that makes it permeable, because everything is impermeant, everything is perishable, everything is diminished, everything is transitory from a thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Because I mean, you understanding how the metaphysics or mechanisms work from whatever you believe in. Within Taoism, it's simple. The primordial mother is the Wu Ji, the stillness, the void. She animates consciousness, consciousness animates the spirit, spirit animates energy, energy animates the material world, being the body, all distortion. That's a lens of Taoist metaphysics. Is that an absolute? No, it's just a pathway that can help you be self-realized through the alchemical process, where the blending of the mind, the body, and the spirit as one, you see evidence through conjuring of healing, manifestation, things that are undeniable, that are an experiential moment that cannot be altered. When you see flesh meld before your eyes, you know it's real. You have a phenomena.
Right. There are many, right. You are so right. There are many ways to reach the truth. The only
truth is really your truth.
The only one to be concerned about and to avoid is the person who says my way is the only way. That's the problem.
Right. That's the biggest resistance, is that someone believes that there is an absolute. I mean, just like near-death experiences. I mean, that is absolutely subjective to your experiences leading up to the point of inception.
The one thing, though, that we have in common, and that is the just awareness of being, the feeling of I am. That, I believe, is true for each of us in the exact same way. All the adjectives, when you say I am and I say I am, we're feeling the same thing. And anything we add after that, male, female, old, young, rich, poor, black, white, whatever adjective someone adds, tend to make us different from each other. How boring it would be if we were all the same. But if you remove all that and come back to the initial I am feeling, it is the same, the pure existence. And this, to my understanding and my experience, is the oneness that is the creation of the universe.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. I am comes from some biblical reference or something of that nature. It has something to do with some form of Bible reference, and that's completely fine.
Correct you if you're wrong. I hate to do this on your show, but I'll correct you.
Well, I'm not familiar. It's just whenever I've witnessed things that are like supernatural, paranormal, or what I consider supernormal,
yeah,
I exist in the convergence of the past, present, and future. The only time these things exist is when there's no title whatsoever. So to refer to an I am would literally be avoiding the supernatural experience that is a phenomenon.
Look, even yes, there are biblical references. In John 14:6, when Jesus says, "I am the way," you know, of course, that Jesus did not speak English. He spoke Aramaic. And Aramaic, the words that were translated, "I am the way," could just as easily have been translated, "I am is the way." And this is what the Gnostics did. This is, why the early church was so anti-Gnostic, because each person tried to find the God within, as was also said in Luke 17:21, the kingdom of God is within. So yes, there are biblical references. Not to mention in the Old Testament, "I am that I am." However, it is also from all other parts of the world and all other backgrounds. My favorite, there's so many names for the oneness, the universal creator, whatever you want to, call that being. My favorite is Satchidananda, from the ancient Hindu, from three Sanskrit words: Sat, Chit, Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. Or I'm aware that I am. Wow. That's the name of God according to the ancient Hindus. I'm aware that I am. Wow. And that's what each of us has within ourselves. And the feeling that I have and the feeling you have when we get rid of all the adjectives is exactly the same. You know that's true if you just look back at a picture of yourself when you were a kid, right? A lot of it was the same, but a lot of it was different. That little child did not know everyone that you now know, did not know the relationship you have, the studies you've done, the experiences you've had since that picture was taken. But the same way you look into a mirror right now and know that that person and I are the same, you once were able to do that with that child's picture, because that was who you were at that time. And you looked in and you said, "I am that being. That is me. I am." And that feeling of existence, that's all that it is. That's the oneness, existence. I am. Anything else, anything we say after that is an adjective.
Yeah, I mean, linguistics is interesting. The universe doesn't really have a moral compass if you're using that as a lens, but it sounds to me like it's a body-centric type of thing. I refer to that as first person, third person, no person. To have existence as absolute, a holy stream that is a convergence of everything as a whole, requires no participation of the self, meaning that it's a resonance that is obtained through your own gratification and graduation of a mimicking effect that basically creates a divergence of energy material, and we blend it and realize that it is vibratory, frequential, and holds resonance. That in of itself, if we're not thinking, if we're thinking, we're not knowing. If we're knowing, we're feeling. And that's the phenomenon of a human being having the ability to access a feeling that can be recognized without verbal context. And then you know you have arrived. That type of phenomenon, which would be an extension of sensory perception.
Mhm.
That's how I've taught it for many, many years. And it seems to be very effective, but everyone has their own. I don't discount linguistics. I mean, I can walk up to anyone in the street. I can turn into Justin Bieber and erase their name in about 3 seconds. But that's what someone would, from a psychologist perspective, call a reverse hallucination. Well, that's resonance. And it doesn't require me participating in a conversation. You have to merge and blend the biofields so you have commandeered their conscious and unconscious process. That's how they are able to just disappear, which is what the training of trance, sort of like transcendental meditation in of itself so many decades ago, is really just you training to hypnotize yourself. But I hate that word. It's a little dirty word, but it gets where it needs to go.
And also, what a waste of time it is. It's great to be there once. Holy cow, or holy shit, if I can actually say that on your show.
We're gonna say shit, fuck, anything. I don't really care.
There you go. But so many times there was a time when the goal was to go sit in the cave and to disappear, and wow. The villagers would come, and the guy'd be sitting there in a trance, and wow, he's made it. Well, yeah, that's one, it's history, and two, it's what a waste, I like Sri Aurobindo's perspective of, coming down, devolution into matter, and then evolution coming back. Go experience that transcendental, experience the oneness. Now, bring it back with you into the world. Why was I given all this stuff? What abilities do I have? I'm telling you this, I will never be a quarterback for a professional football team. I know that to be true. And that's not just because I'm 85 years old. It's because I didn't have that ability. But I have been given skills and abilities and gifts. And when I had my near-death experience at age 37, and I sat on the couch a week afterwards saying, why, Lord, why did I have to wait this long to find out that you exist? And I hear the answer. If you'd known this from the beginning, how could you have shared it with people who don't know? You've been on both sides of the river now. All right? Share that information. And that's when I went out to school. I got my PhD at the age of 55 in the evolution of human consciousness. All right? I have studied as many religions as you can possibly think of, spiritual paths, and discovered different ways of doing things, of finding out. And as I said, I'll never be the quarterback, but I can write, I can speak, and I can think, even at my age, and so I put it together. That's what I can do. But if my book doesn't get out there and share the word, so be it. The creator, the oneness doesn't need this little piece of meat in order for the truth, the oneness to come out. At some point in the future, it'll happen. You know that great story, don't you, of the the Buddhist student who's sitting up on the mountain, with, studying from the guru, and he's about to leave to go out into the world to spread the teachings. And the guru says, before you go, take this piece of paper and keep it with you. And he says, okay, master, whatever you say. And he puts it in his pack, and out he goes. And 10 years later, somewhere else out in the, in the world, he suddenly feels like he's dying. He feels terrible, and he hears the master's voice saying, eat the piece of paper that I gave you. The master says so he reaches into his pack, takes it, eats the paper. The next morning, he's fine. He's fine. Couple years later, he's back at where he learned and up from the mountain, and the master is still there. And he says, Master, you are so great. You're so wonderful. I was dying. I was dying from, something. And I heard you say, eat the paper, and I took it out and I ate it, and I became healthy again. And the master says, I knew you were the one. I knew you were the one. I knew that someday you were going to be poisoned. And that paper had been dipped in the antidote to that poison. So that's why, I knew you were the one. I always knew you were the one. And the student said, thank you, master. He said, by the way, I could have lost that paper over the years, or written on it, or given it away. What if I didn't have it with me? At which point the master says, then you wouldn't have been the one. So we each do what we can do. We do what we want to do, what makes us happy inside. And if we do that, we are doing what we're supposed to be doing, using our skills and talents for the good of all. What else is there?
Well, yeah, I mean, it seems to me like the biggest draw to this existence is the human condition. You become your Sherlock to your Watson through the labyrinth of the finite mind, come out the other end, and human being is the byproduct of self-discovery and self-analysis to some type of returning 360 degrees from where you started, realizing that being childlike in your nature, accepting everything at face value, tends to turn out pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, being childlike is an interesting thing. I'll tell you another story, if I might. My 8-year-old birthday. My Aunt Claire asked me, "What do you want to be?" And I said, "I want to be happy." And my mother's walking past at the time. She stopped. She says, "You can't be happy. You have to be something." Despite my mother's words, I think that may be the defining moment of my life. That's all I have ever wanted. To be joy. Sure, I had to have a job when I was younger, and where things are material things, because that's what society tells you need. But when you get down deeper inside, what do you really want? Joy. Why do you do anything? Why did God create the universe? Not because his mother said, "Get off the couch, you lazy kid." All right. It's because of the feeling of, from the inside, to turn something, to make something, to have something materialize. What a fabulous feeling. What an experience, you know, and all of these things. So that's my three rules of life now. You know, one, be happy. Two, be kind. Three, that's it. You know, if you're happy and kind, happy on the inside, kind to others on the outside, what else do you need?
It's interesting. I mean, have you ever wondered why the phenomenon, the so-called obsession of near-death experience, which seems to be very popular right now, why that is so prevalent? Why is that the most talked about, fascinating allure to self-discovery? Through my own exploration, it's quite simple. We're breeding a new human being, someone that is weak, someone that is addicted, someone that does not want to actually experience. They want to voyeur. They want to be the voyeur. They want to look through someone else's lens and not participate in their own human condition. And from that, you literally generate people that are the voyeurism is their main stay of
How
just
do you how do you read? Excuse my interrupting here, but how do you read that from the awareness of near-death experience? All right, mine took place in 1978.
Mhm.
I was 37 years old at the time, and Raymond Moody had written about this early on in that decade, but nothing had been written about it before that, at least not that I know of, that I'm aware of. Why are people interested in it now? Because it is it's accepted that yes, there is a reality after we die. Science said simply, when you die, that's it. We're out of here. It's over. It doesn't matter. All right. Um, but what Raymond Moody did was to tell these stories of people from all sorts of different countries and ethnic backgrounds and languages who told the same story, even though they couldn't have been speaking with each other because of their different backgrounds and languages. So maybe there's some reality to it. So when I experienced it,
Mhm.
you know, I realized I was having that same experience that
Mhm.
others were having. And that what led me into further study and deeper study
Mm.
to see that what I experienced and what the people Raymond Moody had written about had experienced is the same thing each one of us will experience at some point in time when we make the transition from this life to the next one. I was a chaplain for a hospice. Later, you know, toward the last job I had in my life, when I realized the importance of helping people make the transition across, you know, and I even was with my mother when she died and helping her performing therapeutic touch on her body, helping her leave through the highest chakra, and thinking how wonderful, what a blessing to help her into the next world like she helped me into this world. You know, so I don't see this experience as making people voyeurs. I think it makes us more experiential that, you know, and can get rid of fear. There's nothing to fear about that. I'm not afraid of it now. Been there, done that. What's to be afraid of?
Well, it's the detachment of just the superpower of the human being, which is empathy. because people live through other people's experience. I personally, probably in my lifetime, if I had to count, maybe 200 plus people I've transitioned at their point of deception, transition, divergence. And that's just part of the job, helping people find their way through to their end point and then rebirth. But the truth be known, today it's a dichotomy of dopamine to serotonin. And so your attention and intention is the most powerful thing that you have. And so when people regulate their homeostasis and they can't do it because they need too much more of this drug, which requires them not participating from the programming that is the environment of who they are, it becomes problematic, because you will never find the center of self, which is actually the truth serum, because you are everything and nothing at the same time, which is a fundamental of Taoism, which is what we refer to as the great bellows. You're contracting and expanding at the same time. You're all things and nothing at the same time. Conceptual until otherwise noted, because this requires meeting the primordial mother we refer to as the Wu Ji, which is the stillness. This is the holy stream, the unification of everything.
Yes.
And that is what we evoke, what some people are familiar with. It's called Wu Wei, effortless action, effortless effort. It is serendipitous, synchronistic way, which is not the only way, but it is a way that you can have very, very magical experiences that seem to work in line with whatever your desires are, but that requires a resonance. So what I've noticed is people live through others' experience. This is what social media is full of. Yet they are just the keyboard warrior pounding away and being discontent with not enough explanation. You didn't go deep enough into how you died and came back. And, oh, well, I'm not thinking that what you said was actually real. But this person, by the way, has probably never experienced anything in their life, yet they get to merge into the human experiment called the melding pot, the social sphere of soup, digital poison that comes out. So that dopamine and homeostasis it's a rare place to find yourself. And so, when we feel that charge together right now, which is what my parapsychologist friends called psychokinesis, this is where there's a meeting of a convergence where that resonance meets. We are meeting together. We're communing together. So please forgive me if I sound cynical. I'm not. I'm just, from my own experience and witnessing, people are very fragile. They have not met themselves at all through their experiences, and they're constantly moving the bar so they never get to. So that means that pleasure and pain are the two ingredients and part of the commodities of duality. Until otherwise noted, you have to play with the yin and yang symbiosis, the tango that is part of this material state. And it's only when you recognize you are everything that changes. But fear will dictate and manipulate you as to whether you're able to really find your way through that labyrinth, Watson. Or will you be the Sherlock to your next mystery? Or perhaps maybe never, ever have a level of deduction to decipher that what looks back at you in the mirror is not flesh and blood, but the true essence of the holy stream I refer to as heaven on earth. Right. And that you don't have to go anywhere. As we refer to within Taoism, let the man who's never left the village, let him know he's seen the world. It's right here.
When you realize that, and yes, it takes it may take a long time to realize that, but once you do and you accept it, it changes everything. When I wrote my first book, which was called Letters to a Dying Friend, it was back, oh my God, it was back in 1989. Introduction by the Dalai Lama. It was a Western version of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I went on shows back then and talked, and I get calls from people saying, you know, I've had you, and I talked about my near-death experience, of course, and they say, I had experiences like that, but my family said, oh, you're making that up. Just don't talk about it. Just stop it. And so I don't think about that anymore. I didn't, you know, boy, would that have changed my life if I had followed, what? Well, yes. And guess what? It still can. You know, the fact that it's been put on the back burner for 10, 15, 20 years because a family member said, oh, stop saying that. Father Anthony thinks we're weird enough already. Don't, tell stories like that. You know, bring it out. You know what you experienced. Let me tell you another story about myself, which all of these things, it's not that I think I'm interesting. I am no more interesting than any other individual, but I am as individual as each individual. And when you put it all together, that's why I feel I have a purpose. And my purpose is to be happy, to be kind, but at the same time, use my skills and talents to put together my experiences. I was not a great college student. Decent marks, but nothing great. One of the key days of my college career, I'm walking across campus, and there's a sign that says psychology tests, $5. Now, $5 back in the 1960s is a lot of money. So I said, okay, I'll take these tests. And with a bunch of, master theses where they needed, numbers and experience. So I took all the different examinations. The last one was going into a room. There were 5 desks set up, 5 panels with a red light and a green light and a button under each light. And there was a professor in the corner, and 4 other students in the room. They said, oh, the 5th one is here. We can do it now. And the professor says, all right, I'm going to turn on either the green light or the red light. It'll be the same for each of you. And as soon as you see it, press the button underneath it. And we'll keep going as long as possible until somebody makes a mistake. And then we'll stop. And the idea is to see how long we can keep going. And we were next to each other, but there were, panels in between. You couldn't see the other people's lights. All right. Like on a Jeopardy, So it goes red, I push red. It goes green, I push green. Red, green, green, red. Suddenly, beep, professor says, somebody made a mistake. And the guy, we're going to stop. And the guy at the end says, who pushed red? I said, I did. He said, why? It was green. I said, no, it wasn't. It was red. He said, well, mine was green, and the professor said that they'd be the same for all of us. And I said, well, mine was red. And the woman over here said, well, mine was green. And everybody else, the kid other said, mine was, I said, mine was red. I don't care what yours was. I know what I saw. He said, are you calling me a liar? I said, you son of, and we raised fists and started going towards each other. And suddenly I'm grabbed like this, and it's the professor. He says, easy, easy, young fella. It was red. You were right. This is not a test for how fast one can react. It's a test for how one stands up under peer pressure. You did very well. Here's your check. Go collect your $5. And I was so pissed. And I completely forgot about and pushed that out of my memory until my near-death experience. And then I said, I know what I experienced. and I know that I can trust my experiences and my awareness. And that's why what happened changed my life. And that's why that story of back in college just was just a little further affirmation for me to accept what happened and saying, this is real. I'm not making something up. Now, all these things come together to who I am. You know, that's just the way it is. You know, what can I say? You seem to be a very special person yourself, right? Your background, your things are unique from anyone else that ever has, ever does, or ever will live on this planet or anywhere else in the universe, more than likely. Your uniqueness is kind of special and you're using it for good purpose. That's what we're all here to do, I believe.
It's all the superpower. Everyone has them.
Yep.
See, it's that phenomenon where some people say, well, you have certain gifts. Well, actually, you have all the same gifts. It just depends on how far you want to go to actualize them.
That's right.
And that just depends on your curiosity and your persistence in wanting to elaborate on what you perceive as reality.
Mm-hmm.
Is really determined by your experience. And so evidence, as Sherlock would say, elementary, my dear Watson. Evidence is the very truth serum that will actualize anything, but that requires a persistence that is not coming from a psychological state, but an embodiment.
Mm-hmm.
And when you embody something or anything, it becomes the very expression of who you are, which
Yes.
is the perfect way to
Well
merge
said.
yourself in.
Well said.
I really enjoy watching people transform. The formula is the same. It just depends on whether someone's ready to meet themselves. And what that requirement is can you be the persistence, the resistance to true awakening, awareness, consciousness, beingness that requires no participation of the self. The paradox becomes deeper by the second, except it's very, very fundamental. It's vibratory, frequential, and holds resonance. And so if you can actually find a way to express that and use that as a decipherer for your experience, however that may be, whether through psychology, phenomenon, parapsychology, supernatural, supernormal, whatever it is, linguistics, trance, experience, non-experience, it all returns back to the same place. It just depends. I think near death is an interesting, I had one when I was 8 years old. I got hit by a car head on. I was dead for 40 minutes. And quite frankly, I think it set forth. But before that, I was already seeing through walls, seeing through people, doing all that kind of stuff at 4. So it kind of just in line with everything else because I was obsessed with superheroes. So, superheroes, Incredible Hulk, Superman, Batman, that was reality for me because I didn't have any other, I was a latchkey kid. My mother really had very little influence over me being raised by a single parent. Just if you can think it, you can realize it can be realized. If you put your mind to anything's possible. So I just used that formula and then I was left alone with a TV and everything else sort of materialized. It just turns out that way that everything speaks through you if you just acquire attention to it.
That's right. And it speaks through you in the way, or should I say, with the accent that you bring to it. The truth comes through you, through your filters. And our eye filters. We experience the same thing, and it may come out of us somewhat differently. It's the truth for each of us, but a white light going through filters will show up pink if it's a pink filter, or green if it's a green filter, or whatever the color is of that filter. The light on the other side that is seen will be that particular color, even though it's a white light on the top. So that we each have our filters, and each one of us, each being has them, and they're fantastic creations. And the beauty of it is that they are all different, and we really, really, it bothers me so much that we still have people who say that just because somebody thinks different or looks different or believes different or speaks differently, they're bad. They're not, fully developed, or bad people. That's nonsense. We are all creations of the Creator. And we each have skills and talents and abilities which can be used if we go back to the core and realize that I have been given these for the good of all and for my own joy, and to use what I have. Yes, it's different than you, of course it is, but together, look how much more we can do than either one of us individually. That's what it's all about.
The collective.
Yes, yes.
The general path of a Taoist is the rite of passage. Once you arrive, servitude and selflessness is the very default. It's not a requirement, it's a rite of passage that is the conditioned effects of what you do within the alchemy. You can't fight it. It just is the very absolute that people are looking for. But it comes from complete surrender, sacrifice.
Exactly. I lead meditation groups online and at the senior center near where I live.
Mm-hmm.
And I've asked people, tell me, what is something you are good at? And they'll tell me, well, I'm a really good cook. I'm a great photographer. I love to do physical exercise, whatever. And then first, I'll say to them, I'll bet if I asked you, what do you like to do? It would be the same answer. Son of a gun, isn't that strange? You like to do what you're good at doing. Doesn't mean, everything that that you do everything that you're good at? No, not anymore. I'm a great singer. I used to sing professionally. I don't do that anymore. Huh? But I do other things. But there was a time when I traveled around the country, you know, singing, earning money, making music, and partying afterwards. How cool is that? Right? So this is the point. We have been given, each of us, our uniqueness. Our uniqueness. The thing that is not unique is our feeling of existing. But when we look out through our own individual, you know, piece of meat, as I call it, and our own skills, talents, abilities, you know, that's what it's there for. Our life has been given to us with all its, impulses and urges, thoughts and emotions, talents and handicaps as the raw material to be fashioned into a thing of beauty and joy by whatever creative ability we can summon. And I believe that to be true. And, that's what I wish for all people. Enjoy who you are. Be happy. Do what makes you happy. Be good to others. If hurting someone else makes you happy, that's not right, because they've got the right to be happy too. But do it.
Everything's an iteration of self, right?
There you go. There you go. There's only one of us here speaking to itself anyway.
I mean, the only time I would ever be a fan of Deepak Chopra or Oprah would be a defining moment back in the 80s when talk shows were a thing, and she had Deepak on, and her audience never really experienced something from an Eastern spiritual sort of perspective. And so she's welcoming Deepak to the face camera that's speaking to the audience. She's like, "Well, welcome back to the Oprah show. I have one of my greatest new guests. His name is Deepak Chopra. He's sitting there in a lotus position on the chair." And she looks at him and goes, "How are you, Deepak?" He goes, "Well, first I need to start with, I'm not here, but my body is." And she went, "We'll get back to you right after this commercial." And so, that's about the only time I ever really enjoyed the synergy of those two, if at all, other than that. But they brought to a level, as you would put it, consciousness where people really had no idea. I mean, coming into the 80s, I mean, the closest thing we really got was Yogananda sprinkling things across the West in the 40s, 50s, 60s, however that really materialized. Then the Beatles dropping some acid, singing a bunch of songs, and the idea that, maybe there's something more than Christianity. But, this phenomenon really didn't. And now, meditation, when I first started myself when I was a teenager, meditation to me was Hare Krishnas and vegans with hairy armpits. I didn't really have any reference. So, it takes a minute to really embody. So I think that meditation is, if anything, one of the most powerful things someone can acquire to really find themselves. What do you think?
Meditation is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. I didn't learn it until my late 30s. I've been doing it for over 42 years now. But there's this great line, all the water in the ocean cannot sink a ship unless it gets inside the ship.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way, all the stuff that's going on in the world outside cannot drive you bonkers unless it gets inside you, right? When you get into meditation, you get so deep into yourself that everything is left out there. When new people come into meditation, I tell them the first few days, times, just quiet the world out there, leave it there. It'll be there when you get back, when we finish. Then as you can get deeper, you can leave your thoughts out there, leave your emotions out there. I have thoughts, I have emotions. That's not who I am. And you can get deeper and deeper and deeper. And when you get to that place of pure peace, where you no longer are are this body, but you're just the feeling of being, pure being, undefinable, just experiential, then whatever's out there, it's still there, but I can handle it. I may not be able to stop the war in Gaza or in the Ukraine, or these days in Venezuela as well. Who knows where it's going next? But I can make the world around me a little bit better. The world around a better place. And that's what we're here for, I believe. Make it a better place. And the funny thing is, you're going to enjoy it more while you're at it. the nicer the world around you, chances are the happier you're going to be. How weird is that, right? I love it.
Well, it's been a phenomenal conversation, my friend. I want to end with I want everyone to go out and experience your messaging and wisdom teaching. You've written a new book. There's a website that we can go to. So I want my students, disciples, 126 as subscribers, all the people that are following the path of this podcast and my ancient teaching. I want them to go on and experience yours, because this is the whole purpose, that we meet in the middle to share this truth serum, and this immortal elixir is given to everyone to create an endurance that goes beyond the mind, and then you can really experience life as a whole. So social sphere and interweb under this podcast, if you would like to share with them, Anton, any closing comments that you want to end this conversation with, you can show them your book. We're going to go to your website. Tell me a little bit more.
Well, first off, I want to thank you very, very much for the invite. It's, I never know what to expect. You're not going to believe it, but this is not the first one I've ever done. The first podcast that I've done. But boy, had this been special. It's been an absolute joy speaking with you and to share the, thoughts back and forth. And I hope that I've been of some value and interest to your viewers. Yes, I do have a new book. It's called Handbook
for a New
Consciousness, the Next Step in Human Evolution. And that's me, Anton Grosz. And anyone can reach me at Anton Grosz, ANTONGROSZ.com. And the book is available online from my website or various different things. And as I say, you're not going to learn a thing by reading it, because no book can teach you and make you know something. But you'll just learn about something by reading a book. But the puzzles, the games, the mind exercises inside are specifically designed to give a reader their very own epiphany and aha moment without having to die to do so.
And that to me is very exciting, giving people tools that are applicable to their own experience, or someone that wants to get started, something simple that gives them an instant moment of clarity.
Exactly.
And that type of simplicity is definitely desired, and we need more of that, especially in this spiritual turmoil, or whatever you want to call it. It's called the internet, where there's just too much talk, not enough action, and people can go on and on and on. You need to be able to experience, and that's one thing I love about your teaching is experiential moment is really the only thing you have.
That's right. Despite whatever belief system you have, that's the path that you will experience this on, because it is non-denominational, but it covers it all. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, my dear friend, for spending the time with us today. Very grateful for you. I'm very grateful for the universe bringing you into my life. I'm very grateful to the audience for sharing their time with us today. I'm your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing. I'll see you in the next one, guys.